Welcome back to the Puck Bunker. I'm Rocco Zappia, joined as always by my co-host, the only man who can go beer for beer with Islanders legend Billy Smith, Darren Boyce. And speaking of Islanders legends, we are joined by Rocco, another one. You're not seeing double. That is not a typo. There are two of us. Rocco from Isles House, maybe best known on Twitter as Pizza Sports Guy. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
Thank you for having me tonight, boys. Excited to be here and can honestly say first podcast I'm a part of with two Roccos. Really excited about it.
Honestly, me too. This is absolutely a first. Okay, I want to know, where did Pizza Sports Guy come from? Because like you kind of blew up a little bit on Twitter there with that handle. So like, are we doing pizza reviews or what?
No, not pizza reviews. I'm in the pizza business. It's just something I've done basically my whole life. And then a couple years ago, I kind of was looking for something else to do. Obviously, it's a very demanding job. You're there hours and hours a day, but people walk in every day, talk sports with them, and I decided to take it to another level, start a Twitter page, came up with the name Pizza Sports Guy, kind of took on a life of its own and just have fun posting about sports, posting about pizza. Two favorite things really in life. So other than my family, obviously, but two of my favorite things. So always enjoyed talking about it with everyone on Twitter.
The similarities run deep. My family's 3-4 generations in the pizza business. Started their first restaurant in 1952 in Cornwall, just north of Messina, New York. So that's funny. I guess more than just a name, the Italians. I guess we get the stereotypes for a reason. Hey, we're not really helping two guys named Rocco of family pizza businesses. I don't know, Darren, how do you feel about this?
I feel out of my element here.
I would say so, dude. We're going to start speaking with hands only here soon, I think. But let's dive into the topic of the day, which is the New York Islanders. So, Rocco, first tell us about Isles House and what you guys are doing and where our viewers can find you guys. And then let's get your thoughts on the season that was 24-25, obviously a little disappointing, but with a pretty good ending for you guys, which we'll dive into later. But talk to us about Isles House.
Yeah, so Isles House is a pod I started with two of my good buddies, Jack at Isles Den and Ethan at Ethan GSN. We also have our great producer, Tyler, that you could find at Bars Down. A lot of things going. We got the pod. We got Patreon Discord going as well. Just a bunch of good stuff. We've seen good growth over only our first year, but I feel like I've known these guys my whole life, honestly. We've become such close friends. And as you guys know, when you share a passion and a love of a team, it just forms a strong bond. So just love the guys I do the pod with. I enjoy it every single day. Love the people we talk with on Twitter, the Discord, wherever else. Just can't get enough hockey, to be honest. So just Isles Talk nonstop. And you could find us at Isles House on Twitter and Isles House Patreon.
Love it. So obviously not the best year,
no,
hockey-wise in Long Island. Talk to us about kind of your thoughts on the season and maybe what the state of the fan base was like after the season was over, but before the draft lottery kind of changed a lot of things for you guys.
Yeah, so honestly, and I said this a couple times throughout the year on our pod, like just a stale team. They were caught in the middle. They weren't really good enough to make a strong push to become a contender. Their ceiling was sort of a wild card berth in the playoffs if they had a good year, stayed healthy, whatnot. And the floor was sort of not bad enough to get that top pick you're seeking when you don't make the playoffs. So they basically ended up right there the last 3 years, right? After the back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals runs, it's sort of been a steady decline. You go back-to-back years where you get wild card berths, lose to the Hurricanes, which is just an awful matchup for this Islanders team. Like, I think I would have felt more confident against any other team in the East those 2 years other than the Hurricanes. Just not a good matchup for them. But, yeah, it felt like something had to give this year, and they finally kind of fell off a little bit. And now I don't think they were as bad as their record was. You had a ton of injuries. I mean, mid-season, you're signing Tony Deangelo out of Russia just to get defensemen on the ice. So there was a lot going on. Sorokin came into the year with a back injury. Barzal played, I think, like 20 games, who's their best player. A Lou-run team, you're nervous the whole time, right? He's constantly in win-now mode. The only reason he traded Brock Nelson was because Brock Nelson did not agree to the extension he put on the table. And that's the craziest part. And that's where what actually sort of kicked off this whole new wave of Islanders hockey, if you will. Come the deadline, Lou approaches Brock. Here's my offer. Brock says no go. He wants to go to a contender. Totally acceptable, right? He's getting up there. They get Cal Ritchie and a first-round pick, which right off the bat, I thought that was a great return. I love Brock. I appreciate everything he's done on the island, but it was time. You guys know with players from rooting for your team for so long in Ottawa, sometimes it's just time and it's the right time to sell. It was the right time to sell Brock. Honestly, at the time, I wanted them to offload more guys and sell more, but they only went with Brock, and they got a great return. So post-deadline, I was pretty happy just off that return. Season rolls on. They're kind of still in the middle, 10th from the bottom. So now we're thinking, all right, whatever. It's the beginning. It's year one of a retool, rebuild, more so retool, whatever you want to call it. And we're looking at the Victor Eklunds of the world at 10th overall, other names that are going to slide in a maybe not so strong draft. I think that's fair to say. And then suddenly that lottery comes up and you get the luck, you get the ping pong balls, and suddenly it feels like everything changed. So Matthew Schaefer, hoping he's a franchise piece moving forward. Huge fan, not just of the player, also the personality. He just seems like an absolute great kid and a marketable kid as well, something the Islanders have needed for a while. They need to move. I respect Lou and what he did here. They had good runs, but they need to move into the modern day NHL, if you will. Let guys go on podcasts. Let guys, show more of their personal lives on social media. It's time, and honestly, winning the lottery sort of felt like the perfect storm for this team.
So do you think winning the lottery kind of changed how they dealt with Noah Dobson? Do you think that changed how they kind of addressed that, I don't know, I want to say issue, but addressed that situation?
So yes and no. I think it sort of gave the Islanders a little bit of leverage, if you will, because they sort of had this guy, you draft Schaefer, and maybe not right away, but down the road, all expectations are he's your number one guy, right? So basically the Islanders could then go to Dobson and say, hey, we're paying you more maybe like a number two down the road than a number one because we have our other number one. So we do have a ceiling with what we're willing to pay you. And from everything we've heard over at Isles House, that was pretty much the case. I'm not going to go like too deep into the back and forth and what were the offers or whatever else, but there were offers the previous offseason. Dobson wanted more money, which is fine, right? You want to bet on yourself, go ahead. But he bet on himself, and it didn't really go well. He did not have a good season. I mean, Montreal fans can get excited, and they have a right to be. But this, I personally believe with Dobson, I think that 70-point season was more the outlier than the norm. He's not great in his own zone. And I think the Islanders saw the flaws and maybe didn't want to pay him like the number one guy he was asking to be paid. And he has a right? It's his right to go out and get the money. And the fact that someone else was offering that money, he had the right to take that. But I think the Islanders did a good job of getting picks. Now, I think their end game in making that trade was Hagens at the time. I think their goal was to go up and use those picks for Hagens. But the way the chips fell, honestly, really worked out well, too. To get Eklund and Aitcheson in that draft, two guys that were ranked well ahead of the 16 and 17 spot. I mean, add that to Schaefer. And now are you going to get the production you got from Dobson right off the bat? No, you're not. But your future looks a lot brighter with these three top prospects you have to add to Cal Ritchie, to add to Cole Yzerman. So suddenly you have a prospect pool that went from mid-20s to probably top 10 in one offseason, which is pretty crazy to think about. I don't think that happens very often.
No, it's a pretty good turnaround for them, I think, in that sense. And the thing with Dobson too, you said the 70-point season may be the outlier. I have a hard time seeing him being able to repeat that in Montreal. Obviously, Lane Hudson has earned the right to take that top power play. And I mean, like
right.
when Dobson had that year, he was getting fed on the power play over and over and over, very much Bouchard-esque in Edmonton, how he is definitely a focal point in terms of shooting strategy. And that role's was great for Dobson, but he's not going to have that in Montreal. So
No.
there's a contract, and look, I've always liked the player, so I hope it works out for him, although not for Montreal because fuck them. But that's the kind of contract that can become an anchor or an albatross on your team, sort of down the road, where you're in a situation where you maybe have to eat half to move them. Now, before we get on, because you mentioned some of the prospects, and obviously we're a prospect show, so we'll spend a lot of time on that. But how do you feel the fact that they've moved Dobson, they brought in all this high-end talent now? What does that spell for the future of Mathieu Barzal?
Well, first of all, I don't think Matthew Barzal is moving anytime soon at all. I think he's their franchise guy. He signed on for, I believe, a year or two ago. He extended for 8 years. He wants to be here. He's become a Long Island guy through and through. He's expressed that himself a number of times. I think a lot of those trade winds that were blowing were just sort of more fans creating something. And honestly, I know a lot of rumors coming out of Montreal. Trying to think of a couple other teams. Utah. So supposedly the ask for from Utah was Barzal. Like their initial thing with the Owls trying to move up to 4 to get Hagens was Barzal, which in my mind is a ridiculous ask. I love Hagens as a prospect, but if he turns into Barzal, that's almost like a perfect world scenario if he becomes that good. So I'm not giving up the talent that's proven right now for a potential future Barzal. It just didn't really make sense to me. If they wanted to make it work for futures, great. But yeah, Barzal I don't see going anywhere. Horvat I don't see going anywhere. Sorokin I don't see going anywhere. And the other one, honestly, I'll throw in there too now is Romanov, because he just extended for 8 years. So I think Darche came in and sort of wanted to establish his veteran core, if you will. Basically his quote-unquote untouchables. These are my guys. We're running with this core. And the only way I could see him moving any of these guys is if it really gets to a bad point in a couple of years. Like if the next 2 years they're not playing well and they have all these prospects, these guys are close to 30, it might be time. But that's something you find out down the road. I think Darche is taking it as an evaluation year. I know who my core is. I know who my, this youth movement is coming. I want to see who works in between the lines. Will Jonathan Drouin work? Is Simon Holmstrom going to become that guy? There's a lot of nice names, not top level, but a lot of nice players they have that I think they feel good about. So I think if there's maybe a year to just sit and evaluate, this is the one, and then we're going to get a true sense of the next step. Probably come the deadline. If they're in it, I think I don't know if they're going to be extreme buyers, but they'll let it play out, sort of like Columbus last year, where you kind of let it play out. You got a young core coming up. You don't want to sacrifice any of that. Now, if they're out of it, it's going to get interesting because you have a couple of pending UFAs, a couple of guys with 2 years left, and guys that'll bring value. I mean, one guy you guys probably love, John Gabriel Pajot, for agent to be. We know, listen, you could say what you want about the player, but come playoff time, I think 20 teams would love to have that guy. Great on the ice, great off the ice, face off, two-way, very responsible in his own end. The exact guy you want is your 3C on a playoff team. So they do have valuable guys. Anders Lee as well is in a contract year. He had a really nice bounce back year. He plays like that again. It's another guy that's going to have value. So there will be decisions to be made, but it's nice for both the fans and obviously management to have these prospects in your back pocket, because I'm kind of going into the year, if they're good, great. If they're not so good, that's okay too, because we could just enhance this pool even further.
So before we go into the prospects, two questions here. One, do you think Lou would have actually made the Dobson trade, or do you think he would have been more inclined to sign him, or would Dobson have actually signed if Lou was still around?
That's interesting. It's hard to say because Lou was the one, obviously, the previous offseason that was negotiating with him. Now, if it was still Lou, I would probably lean Dobson stays, because I think Lou, my biggest thing with Lou and his tenure here, I felt he was loyal to a fault almost, or it's just keeping the same crew up. These are my guys. I like these guys. He was afraid of the turnover. I'm not saying you have to be the Vegas Knights and just get rid of anyone the second you snap your finger, but you got to have some turnover. This is the NHL. It's professional. You can't just be waiting on these guys that are aging. But yeah, I honestly think if Lou was here, I think not only Dobson stays, I think the question of who went first overall would have been really interesting too, because I think that allure of Hagens would have been a little interesting if Lou was still here. I'll say that.
That's interesting. I did want to say if any of those main guys go, in my opinion, I feel like Horvat might be the one just because I feel there'd be a lot of teams interested in him. I know they would be in Barzal too. But I feel like he fits what a lot of rosters are looking for right now, kind of down the middle. So
Yeah.
I do wonder if that's something that happens. Well, we could start with the prospects, I guess, now, if we want, Rocco.
Yeah,
What is
well,
your
let me jump in here because I have
confused when you say Rocco, to be honest.
Yeah, true.
No, yeah,
Too many
Oh, yeah.
Roccos.
too many. What's like okay? The fan base, obviously, there was a push from a section of the fan base for the Hagens, the hometown kid connection, and all that sort of stuff. Is the fan base kind of over that? Are they open arms with Matthew Schaefer? Is everyone convinced that the team made the right choice? Like, look, me and Boyce took about 5 seconds of Matthew Schaefer last year to like, okay, well, this is the best player. Like,
Right.
to us, it was very obvious, but we didn't have our team with the first overall pick with a local boy up for grabs either, right? So,
Right.
at what point did that tide kind of turn? Because I feel like now the kind of energy around the team is it's very, very positive towards Schaefer. And he's kind of won everyone over. But did that kind of take a while? And is there still some segment of the fan base is like, oh, we should have taken the hometown boy first?
I mean, I think there's some people that just from the whole hometown thing and whatever else. And as I said on our pod, it's not a Disney movie. You got to take the best player. It would have been a great story. And you know what? I said it already. I love James Hagens. I love him as a prospect. I think it got to the point where he was being underrated. I do not think he should have slid to 7. I personally would have taken him 3rd. I like him better than Frondell. I like him better than a couple other guys. He fell to 7. It is what it is. But honestly, I think what happened with Schaefer is that he's such a likable personality. And when you hear him talk and you hear him, in all these interviews, he went on Chicklets. He was great. You hear his backstory. He's been through a lot for a young kid. He lost his mother. That was at the forefront of the draft where they put the ribbon, which was a really nice touch, and they put his mother's initials, I believe, on the collar. A lot of really nice things and another great story. It's just like he's such a likable kid, Schaefer. So I think when they first won, and before I get to them winning, I always laugh because when we were supposed to select 10, almost all of us were whipping up mock drafts in our head, right? We got that Colorado first next year. Maybe we take 10th overall plus the Colorado first and we move up for Hagens. We were praying for Hagens because we were supposed to pick 10th, right? The second we got number 1 overall, we got so cocky. We're like, Hagens is off the table. We're going Schaefer. This is our guy. So for most people that, followed the prospects that were going to be drafted, I think understood that Schaefer was the number 1 guy. Honestly, by draft night, I kind of thought he was, no disrespect to Michael Misa, but I kind of thought it was a tier of his own, to be honest. He's just such a good player. I know he's a defenseman. And if he hadn't lost all those games to injury, I don't think it would have even been questioned. And I know there still would have been, oh, Hagens is from Long Island, but that was the main knock on Schaefer. Those trying to get Hagens to Long Island would say, oh, the sample size and this and that. But when you watch, as you guys know, you watch that Schaefer tape, jumps off the screen. Such a good player, so dynamic. He has the potential to be one of the top D-men, if anything, everything works out. So I think at first you definitely had people that wanted Hagens. I mean, you drove around Long Island, you'd have people with bumper stickers that said, bring Hagens home. So it was to that point, but I think most people that watch and know the game pretty well knew Schaefer was the guy, while still wanting Hagens, because we kept hope that we could get Hagens too, basically until he got selected by the Bruins. I mean, we were pumping out Shagens propaganda for weeks before the draft. And then, he went to the Bruins, so dream's over, but still had a very nice draft.
So following up on that, do you know what their final offer was for one of those picks to get Hagens? Like, what were they offering a Boston or, a Nashville in that spot? Was that, is there any rumors to what was actually being offered there?
So there's rumors that, obviously we mentioned it before with Barzal to Utah. I think the Islanders were trying to work out other things. with Utah, but Utah wasn't really having it. I believe both picks plus a player. I don't want to name said players, but and then with Boston, similar thing, coupling the 16 and 17 plus a player to try to get up there, which honestly I thought would have been a fair offer. If you give number 16, number 17, and a solid roster player in, again, a not so strong draft, I think it's a fair enough offer to move up to 7. And if they're not going to do it, I'm okay with them walking away. I don't know how much more you want to offer on top of that, because you don't want to, as much as you want this kid, it's still a business, right? It's still about the value. You can't give up 16, 17 plus another. You can't go too crazy, and I think, honestly, for Hagens, I'm happy for him because he plays in Boston. He plays college in Boston. He got drafted by Boston. It's a pretty cool story. Didn't like that Happy Gilmore got up there and slapped me in the face, but is what it is. And, worked out. Love, I think we're going to get to it later on, but love who ended up sliding to them. So that worked out well. I honestly think, and I've heard this from a couple people, you don't know until you know, but I think if teams knew that those two names would have slid to 16 and 17, they might have been able to move up, quite honestly. I just think no one was expecting, at least for sure, Eklund. I don't think anyone thought Eklund was dropping that far. And then Aitcheson's a nice player too, but he was sort of in that range regardless. But yeah, it just worked out really nicely for the Isles. I'm happy, despite no Hagens.
Well, I'll give you one more Schaefer question, then we can jump into Eklund and Aitcheson. Sure. What are the thoughts? What are the thoughts on his chances to make the opening night roster, and how active was he during Dev Camp in terms of how his injury recovery is going?
So, as far as his chance to make the roster, I think very high. As we know, if you're not set up with a college program like now, it's tough because these school years start in August. A lot of times the hockey guys go a little bit early, get ready, go for their training and whatnot. I mean, McKenna, who committed to Penn State, was sort of on the late end, calendar-wise, for commitments. And you have a couple other kids that are looking to commit. I know Martone just committed to Michigan State, I believe. But, yeah, it's getting late for Schaefer. And the tough part about the rules is that if you want to go to training camp, you can't be signed with a college team. So I think Schaefer's goal, and he's been outspoken about this, his goal is to make the team out of camp. So I think we're pretty much at the point now where he's either going to make the team or he's going to go back to Erie. And I would be shocked if he doesn't at least get the 9-game tryout. And I fully believe he's going to just be here for the whole year. Now, they might go the Stamkos route where you play him a game, then you sit him the next game, get him in the weight room, put on some weight. You don't want him playing the full 82, whatever it is. But I think he's going to be on the Isles roster come October.
And then Howard's do we have an update on kind of the injury? Is that sort of behind him now at this point?
He was a full participant at Dev Camp. He was not a full participant at the Combine. The only things he didn't do, I believe, at the Combine was the bench and the pull-ups. That was just to be a little safe with the shoulder. He's coming off the collarbone injury. So he didn't do some of the workouts there, but come Dev Camp, full participant, played in the scrimmage, looked good, participated in everything, did interviews nonstop. He was on Good Morning America like a couple days after the draft as well. So he's been doing a bunch of interviews, running around, but he's been a full participant on and off the ice.
So just speaking of Dev Camp, or at least prospects here, we got Victor Eklund, Kashan Aitcheson. What's kind of the plan you think with them? And specifically, I wanted to talk more about Aitcheson. Have you heard anything about what kind of the plan might be for him? Because I know there's been some rumblings about him also going to college. And as you said, it is kind of late. I'm just wondering if there's any kind of plan that the teams maybe put in for him, because I don't think he would be, with Schaefer making the team, I don't know if he would be exactly a guy they plan to have in New York this year.
No, he's definitely not making the big club. So for him, it's either back to junior or college. There have been rumblings about the colleges, but again, like we just discussed, that has to happen soon. I would say in the next week or two. So I do know a lot of teams are after Aitcheson. I don't know who's at the top of the list. I mean, he's a very highly touted prospect. There's going to be a lot of college teams that are looking for his services, but he's going to be in junior or select a college team here somewhat soon. And as far as Eklund, correct me on the pronunciation, but he'll be at Djurgården in Sweden. I think that's how you say it.
Better than I can say it.
My Swedish is not great, so we'll go with that.
Djurgården. But I got to say about this Djurgården too. I feel like they have every Swedish prospect. They have Frundell. They have. I'm pretty sure they have the rights to the kid that's coming up next year, Stenberg. So everyone, supposedly comes through this Djurgården's team. But yeah, he'll be over there. He took his name out of the hat for what's going on in a couple weeks, like the showcase.
The rookie tournament, probably.
Yeah, he's not going to play in that. I don't think Frundell is either. I think they both sort of took their names out of the hat. They've been flying to and from the U.S. and Sweden, so they both just decided.
For the World Juniors showcase.
Yeah,
showcase.
Yeah. He's not going, Eklund. So he was supposed to go. He was on the roster, and then he took his name out. I think it's just too much going on. He did just sign his ELC with the Islanders, so they officially landed his rights. But they're going to loan him probably back out to Sweden. And then I'm not sure at the end of his season or just come next season, maybe try him out in the AHL or give him a shot out of camp, see where they're at. But yeah, he'll be back in Sweden. Aitcheson will be junior or college, and I expect Schaefer to be on the big club.
Now, you guys took one of probably the most interesting or intriguing picks of the whole draft, a massive Russian machine, Daniil Prokhorov. What were the reports on him in dev camp, and kind of what's the word on him around town? Because he was a pretty polarizing prospect. I've seen him as high. I saw him ranked as high as 10th overall on lists, and as low as kind of round 3 or end of round 2. You guys got him early to mid second round. So how is he looking so far?
Honestly, at dev camp, he was one of the most impressive players. Big boy. I think he's 6'5", 6'6", but really good hands, good shot, ton of skill. The thing he's going to have to work on is the skating, but what 6'6" guy coming up in the draft doesn't have to work on the skating, right? So, really talented guy. And I think the misconception on him, I've seen a lot of people sort of say, like, he's one of these guys that come out of Russia and he's a boomer bust. Like, he'll either be a first, second liner or not in the league. Not really the case for him. I actually think he could find a nice role in the bottom 6, uses his size well, doesn't mind banging the body. And he's honestly, he's got a really funny personality. Like, at dev camp, he was cheering with the fans, let's go Islanders, in the best English he could. Supposedly on ice during the dev camp, he was chirping, he was yelling at guys. He's very tough on the ice. So you like to see that. You like to see that sort of energy. And I think, honestly, Schaefer was the slam dunk. But if you look at the Eklund, Aitcheson, as well as the Prokhorov pick, it fits this new Darche philosophy. He's trying to get players in-house that are tough to play against. And honestly, it's nice to see, because it kind of felt with the Isles that they lost their identity since those Eastern Conference Finals runs. They were always so tough to play against. They weren't the most skilled, but you didn't want to play them. It was a headache. You didn't want to go in the corners when you got Clutterbuck, Cizikas, Martin, all these guys, but a couple of them retired. Other guys are getting a bit older. So you want to create this new identity, drafting a bunch of puck hounds. Aitcheson loves to lay the body. Prokhorov, another big body that could play a bottom 6 role. So I love the process of Darche thus far.
Were there any other draftees this year at dev camp that really impressed you?
Let me think. There was a couple guys. I know Luca Romano, who you probably could have guessed I would have named, but his skating is supposedly amazing. Most people said it, obviously, outside of Schaefer, who's elite in that department. Eklund and Romano impressed everyone with their skating. A lot of hype around them. But, yeah, I would say them. And then, Yzerman, who was the first round pick last year, dropped to 20. Another guy that dropped, to be quite honest. I think the Isles, the jury's still out, but the Isles have done a nice job of landing guys that have dropped in the draft that we all kind of thought would have gone earlier. Yzerman, he's just got everything you hear about Yzerman. There's a lot of prospects you hear, the shot. Yzerman, it's like, no. This guy's shot is different. Like, it's just a different sound coming off the blade, So really like him. And another under-the-radar guy not a lot of people talk about is Quinn Finley. He had a really good season at Wisconsin last year, and it was not a great Wisconsin team. I believe he was right about a point per game, 20 goals, 20 assists, I believe he put up off the top of my head. So really solid showing. He was a mid-round pick a few years back. another guy that's probably going to have to sign here after his college season. He looked good. A lot of people like him. Another guy people like as a two-way center, Danny Nelson out of Notre Dame. So not only do they have the high-end prospects, they definitely have a lot of guys that could fill depth roles for this team in the near or distant future.
Was there any report on, and this is maybe random, the last pick that you guys made, Jacob Kvasnicka? I thought he was very good for the U.S. at the U18s, and I was happy to see that his name got called, that he played well enough there to get picked. Did he impress at all at camp? And just someone I had noticed during the U18 tournament.
Yeah, no, I mean, people said, it depends who you talk to with these things, right? Like, guys stick out to different people. So one beat reporter might say this guy, and next said, if you really look too far into it, you're going to get too high on your entire draft, to be honest, because it's only good reviews. They're playing scrimmages, they're doing drills. But yeah, he looked good, but it's one of those things that it's not only a big year evaluation-wise for the big club, it's a big year for the prospects as well. We're going to see, you got 3 guys that after this year I could see signing out of college, and that's Yzerman, Finley, and Nelson. Finley and Nelson are going to be in their junior years. Yzerman, highly touted prospect out of his sophomore year. So they're going to be interesting. And then these guys, the guys that went this year, the 4th, 5th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks, those are a couple years down the road. I try not to think – I follow them, but I try not to get too high on them until you get a couple seasons. You know what I mean? Hopefully they'll be steals, but pretty much good reports on everyone at a dev camp that got drafted this season. But, I don't want to say I'm too high on the 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, because I feel like every team's dev camp, you're going to have those sort of answers.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Everybody looks good at development camp. Everyone's in the best shape of their life before training camp. It's
right.
Story as old as time. Now, you mentioned earlier, and it's something that I think is pretty noteworthy, that you guys went from sort of a mid-20s ranked prospect pool to sort of, top 10. I don't think anyone would really argue with you on that point. What would be like, what's the feeling now around the team? And do they think they can kind of be one high pick and done, and add these guys to the, like you said, the existing core pieces, the Barzals and the Horvats of the world? Or do you think they need to have maybe get one more top 10 pick here into the system and then try to move forward with what they have? Because you got these guys in their prime. You don't really want to be in a rebuild for too long while they're in their best years still. But equally, if you can get one more truly high end player, that might make a difference. So just curious on your thoughts on that and which way they might go.
Yeah, again, I think the answers are going to come closer to the deadline. I think they're going to have to make tough decisions, because honestly, even if you're a poor team, like, what do you do with Lee? What do you do with Pajot? But as far as the pick, yeah, I'm not going to lie. Would I rather end up with maybe a top 5 pick again versus being a cusp playoff team? Probably, because you want to build this pool, but it's tough, right? Because you don't want to become the Chicagos or San Jose's, no disrespect, but you don't want to have these top prospects. Say Schaefer becomes what we expect him to become. You don't want him in a Bedard situation where the team is awful for his entry-level deal. You know what I mean? You want to have a situation where this guy could play meaningful games. This guy can learn from veterans, because I think it's sort of doing a disservice to these young players that are superstars or superstars to be, because they go so long with playing just, for lack of a better term, really meaningless hockey throughout the stretch runs of the season. Bedard hasn't sniffed a playoff game, and that was only his second year, but still, I don't expect them to do it this year either. So you want to be careful, because it's easy to say we want the prospects, we want to build the pool and whatnot, but they're all question marks until you see them in the NHL, right? So you can go out and have a tough season and land in a Stenberg or a Verhoff or whoever, but that doesn't mean you're going to turn around the next day and become a good team. It does take time.
What's their biggest weakness in their prospect pool? Like, what are they missing the most?
Honestly, right side D, I would say, because they don't have the top end centers. Their centers are Nelson. They have Bednarik at BU also, who projects more of like, if he makes it a bottom 6-4, like he has a lot of traits that are similar to Pajot, actually. Just like face-off guy, defensive specialist, that sort of thing. So they don't have the high-end center in their pool, but also when you look at their defense, you have Schaefer lefty, one of their better prospects, Isaiah George lefty, who can play the right side, but he's a lefty. And now you have Aitcheson's lefty. You also have pretty solid goalie prospects. You have Gamzin over in Russia, who's looked good. You have Gidloff over in Sweden, who's looked good. Pretty solid there. I forget who it was, but someone ranked them as the top goalie prospects as well. But as we know, goalies are so tough to predict. So I would say high-end center and right side D.
And just to follow up there, you mentioned Isaiah George. He was a guy that kind of surprised and played last year. Well, I mean, he just graduated from junior and he played games. Are there any maybe guys this year you're expecting to maybe make a jump and make the team or play games with them this year?
So to be quite honest with you guys, it's so hard to tell from Bridgeport because that team was so bad. I mean, we did a rundown of our top 15 Isles prospects, and 14 and 15 were Matthew Maggio and Alex Jeffries. And the first thing we said about them was you cannot judge them off last season because there was not one person who looked good in Bridgeport last season. So I'd love to tell you one of these guys are right on the cusp, but to be quite honest with you, I have no clue because Bridgeport was an absolute shit show. They got rid of the coach. They got Rocky Thompson now, solid coach for the AHL in my opinion. You hope they look good. And if these guys, especially the forwards, like if none of these forwards come along, at least you have that next wave coming of Yzerman, Nelson, Finley that could get AHL time as soon as the end of this year, next year. But yeah, I think honestly George might start out in Bridgeport just because of the numbers game, especially if Schaefer makes the team. But so George, and then you got you got another cusp guy like Ethan Bear that they signed. He's fine, but forward wise, honestly, in the Bridgeport right now, no.
No.
There was a reason.
Yeah, I mean they had Gatcombe last year too, who looked good on a bottom line role, but he's one of those guys too. You look at the shooting percentage and you're like, oh, that might have been a outlier season. Pretty high shooting percentage for a fourth line guy. I think he was like over 10% or something. But yeah, you might get one of these guys that have impact towards the bottom of the lineup, but I don't think they're going to have anyone that surprises you and jumps out and you're like, oh, wow, this guy's a top 6 forward. No. I mean, Jeffries and Maggio, I think they could be okay prospects. And at one point, sadly, they were sort of our top prospects. But I think they're more cup of coffee guys. Like if there's a lot of injuries, maybe you got to call one of them up. If one of them jumps off the screen and kills it down in Bridgeport, yeah, give them a shot. But you look at this forward group, I have trouble putting together the 12 forwards that they're going to play day one. They don't have high-end forwards, but they have a lot of depth at the forward position. So unless there's a bunch of injuries, I don't see it. I mean, you got Engvall riding the ferry back to Connecticut every now and then. So I just don't see any of the forwards getting a shot unless there's just a ton of injuries.
Not lose best deal, Engvall, eh?
Is Pierre Engvall
always haunt me? Scotty Mayfield 7 years. Engvall 7 years. Varlamov, who I love, but did you have to give him that term? It's just, ugh. I was on my honeymoon. It's still hard.
Is 38 minutes in, you got the frustration out of him. 38 minutes in. There we go.
You brought up the Engvall deal. I brought it upon myself, but then you mentioned the deal, and I just.
Is he the softest hockey player that's ever been that big, ever?
Maybe. It's frustrating.
Oh my God, dude.
You know what it is too? The dude is he's huge. It's not just he's 6'5" and he's this lanky dude. He's jacked, but he just does not play the body at all, does not want contact, does not go into corners. Great skater as well. I mean, how many guys do you see that are 6'5", 200 plus that could skate like that?
Not a ton.
But the mentality is just like
soft.
Awful.
Soft.
If you're a superstar and you have the skill, you could get away with that. But he's not a superstar.
I've seen ice cream cones harder than that guy. My goodness.
It's a tough watch.
Now you guys brought in some. I would call it discount talent, not discount, but maybe some really talented guys that may have a fatal flaw here and there. What are the expectations for Shabanov, Drouin, and a full season of locker room presence, Tony Deangelo?
So Tony D, honestly, ton of defensive flaws, but really ran the power play well. And that was my issue, just going back to Dobson quick. My biggest issue with him and paying him was that he couldn't win the power play quarterback job over Tony Deangelo. Tony was better than him. I'm not just saying that because Dobson's gone. Tony is better on the power play than Noah Dobson, at least last season when they were on the same team. Very good on the power play, but it's kind of what it is with Tony, right? He's a bottom pair guy. You want to kind of shelter a little bit 5-on-5, but then come power play time, he helps you out a lot. And the Islanders have struggled a lot in that department the last few years. So he's a nice add, and I think he signed a 1-year, like 1.25 deal. So nice cheap deal, worth taking the flyer on. I liked that one. Drouin, another one. Super skilled, kind of on the smaller side. The second we signed him, you're getting all the comments on Twitter, McKinnon Merchant. Just, kind of just thinking he's getting his numbers from last year from McKinnon. And listen, that may be true, but it's not like they gave the guy a 5-6 year deal. They gave him a 2-year deal. He's got a lot of skill. Honestly, a player before all the injuries, electric. He was so much fun in his younger days on Tampa Bay. I know that's not the player they're getting now, but there is still a ton of talent in there, and this is a team that has lacked that sort of high-end skill. So another one, I think he could help. I think he's going to probably play on a line with Horvat. So I think that's a nice pairing with him. You put the smaller skilled guy with the two-way horse, if you will. So I think that's nice. And then as far as Shabanov, I mean, low risk, high reward, right? You sign these guys out of the K. Worst case, he doesn't work out and he goes back. There's no harm in it. You always want to try to sign that guy if you can. We're coming off Siplikov last year. We have Sorokin, Romanov. I think it helps. I think all these guys talk to each other, obviously, and say, hey, like, Long Island's great. We love it here, this and that. So I think that was definitely a draw for Shabanov. Super, super skilled. But we just don't know, right? Like, you come from the Russian league where not a ton of physicality, a little bit more open ice. You could fool around with the puck a little bit. I think we're going to know rather quickly with this guy. Like, if he could shrug off a hit or avoid a hit and he's, versatile enough to figure it out in the NHL, it could work. But if this is a guy that a 5'10" defenseman comes over to you and knocks you off the puck like nothing, it's not going to work. So, ton of skill. I'm excited to watch him, to be honest, because he's got so much skill that it feels like if it works out, it might be really nice. He's a boom or bust guy. Like what I said about Prokhorov before, how he could play in the bottom six. No. Shabanov is either going to be a top 6 skill, make it happen sort of guy, or he's just not going to work out here because he's, no disrespect to him, but at 5'8" and however much he weighs, 150 or whatever, he's not really going to be a bottom 6 guy in the NHL.
Just another guy you guys brought in too in the Dobson trade, Emil Heineman. He's, he didn't get a lot of playing time with Montreal, but I thought when he played, he looked pretty good. He's still got some potential. Is there any, what are the expectations of the Islanders for him? Because he was still like a pretty key part of that trade. He's under control, young player that has some really good NHL skills.
Yeah. So the rumor, when Darche spoke, he sort of said, "Oh, Heineman, it's GM speak, right? So we don't know how true it is." But post trade, he was saying, "I demanded that Heineman be a part of this deal." And it fits Darche's philosophy, so it makes sense, right? If you look at who he added, it was either high-end skill guys or straight-up puck hounds that he just wants to go in and win puck battles. You don't have to score a ton of goals, but sort of bring that identity back. Islander fans love to talk about the identity line back in the day when we had Clutterbuck, Cizikas, and Matt Martin. Now, 2025, it's a little bit different of a league. You need speed. You need skill. I'm not a big believer that you have these goon-type guys on the ice. Not saying that any of those players were that, but you need to have some sort of skill. So I do think Heineman could fit, modern-day 2025 fourth-line style player. He's a puck hound, good skater, does a lot of the little things right. And as you said, he's controllable. And it feels like he has a much further way to go. Like his ceiling is not super high, but he's still not close to that ceiling yet, if you will.
Now you mentioned Mathieu Darche and his philosophy. Is this a change in terms of management and direction of the team that the fan base is very excited about? Obviously, look, he's had tremendous success with his role with Tampa Bay. You're coming over with obviously a winning culture, winning attitude, a couple cup rings to show off to the guys is always nice. And in terms of kind of earning the ears within the room, in terms of everyone kind of getting on board with the direction. Is this the right guy with where the Islanders are headed? Because you mentioned they have to kind of catch up to the new wave of the NHL. They've been run like an old school franchise under Lamoriello. Do we think Darche brings the right combination of old school mentality in terms of these puck hound type guys, mixed with targeting some higher skill players at reasonable risk factors? Are you guys happy with the selection for the new GM and what he's been able to do so far?
So I can only speak for myself, but I'm happy, to be honest. And now to understand the Darche perspective as a whole, you also have to understand the previous regime. We went from, and I always say this, Lou was still a great hire. It did not end well, but at the time Lou was hired, the Islanders were sort of a clown show. You know, you had Garth Snow as GM. You had, other things going on. You were trying to find a new arena, all these different things. So you needed that Godfather sort of presence to take a stranglehold and say, we're doing this way now, and that's just how it is. And that's how they went about business for the years Lou was here. Now, once you stop winning with those sort of rules and regulations, it obviously gets sour a little quicker, right? So now you go from those Eastern Conference Finals runs to, okay, wild card, we're still making the playoffs, and then you miss the playoffs. So now, the belief in him starts to go down, and the marketing, like, Lou's very old school, down to the bones, to be honest. Like, he didn't let guys go on podcasts. He didn't want any access in the locker room. Like, if you watch those what was that doc they did a few years back, like the playoff run, like they followed all the teams. If you go back and watch that, the Islanders were in the playoffs and they barely got any footage, and that was all because of Lou. He didn't want anything in the locker room. He didn't want any individual players getting, shine that took away from the team. Like, even when you went to the team store, you go to other sporting events, you see, like, for example, like the Mets, you see Juan Soto, the Yankees, you see Aaron Judge. The Rangers, you're going to see Shesterkin, Panarin, Ottawa. I'm sure there's Kachuk stuff outside of jerseys all over the place. When you went to the Isles lab at the arena, the only thing you could buy that was individualized for the players were their jerseys, or it was the retired players. Anyone on the team wouldn't, like, there was no like Barzal straight up merch. It was just, you could buy his jersey because he wanted this unity as a team. Now with Darche and this business marketability mindset, it's almost like a breath of fresh air. You have Cal Clutterbuck going on podcast. I believe tomorrow Matt Martin's going to be on a podcast. I know these are retired guys, but it's opening the door for these players to go on pods and honestly make the Islanders a little bit more fun, because the knock on the Islanders for all these years, even though they were good, they were quote unquote boring, right? And we always took it as, all right, we're boring, but we win. So who cares? But let me tell you, there's nothing worse than being boring and bad, because that last season felt that way. They were not good. They were not fun to watch. They had no young talent coming along that you could be excited about. So just going off last year to this year, it sort of feels like a 180. You have a future in sight. You got guys going on pods. They're creating locker room access for fans. They're doing a bunch more for season ticket holders, autograph signings, things like that. So as far as the fan experience, I think a lot of people are happy, and the PR team is happy, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, good vibes. And as we know, off-season good vibes could go away quick if the season goes south. But as of right now, I'm very happy with Darche. I'm happy with the philosophy of drafting and who he went after in free agency. I'm happy with the off-ice stuff. So far, so good. But again, we all know if you're not winning on the ice, it doesn't matter too much.
I just got to ask, you said your opinion. So is the fan base typically the same as your opinion, or is it a little bit different?
I think most fans are happy with Darche's offseason, because I think it's also important to understand Lou did not leave him with a easy situation. You have all these guys signed up long-term. You can't just trade off the whole roster. It's not realistic. So I think he did well for what he could do. Step 1 was solid, but he needs to go step 2, step 3, and we need to see the full plan. We're starting to see a vision, but we need to see the total vision, I think, before everyone buys in on Darche. But right now, good signs, good vibes. And I would say majority, 75, 80% are probably happy with what Darche has done so far.
What do you think, or what are your expectations in terms of the relationship? And I'll frame it this way. You guys have a pretty fiery head coach.
Yeah.
Who is a large personality who demands that his voice is heard. So how do we feel that relationship now, because Lou was able to manage his emotions pretty well, and that worked because Lou was very old school and didn't mind that sort of thing. So how do you feel that might work in terms of the relationship between Patrick Waugh and Darche, and do we see those personalities being able to mesh well?
I think Waugh might be one of the happiest guys in the organization right now, to be honest. He and Lou did not get along at all. Like they butted heads somewhat publicly, which was shocking because as far as the Islanders pre-Waugh during the Lou era, nothing got out. Like Trotz and Lou, lockstep. You didn't hear a word. Same thing with Lambert. Lambert was a Trotz disciple. You didn't hear a word. Then Lou and Waugh just did not agree on who was playing, who they went after in the offseason. They just butted heads. And I think Darche is very good at involving everyone. Even if I can't get your exact guy, I want to hear your opinion. I want to speak with you, figure things out. I know he did that with all his coaches. Darche spoke with all the former coaches that either stayed or went. Then obviously he let Waugh bring in his own guys as well. That was another thing I don't think a lot of people realized. Waugh only had one of his own assistants, Benoit DeRosier. The other assistants still were from Trotz, or they were just straight up Lou guys. You had McLean and another guy's name that escapes me right now, but two guys that have been here for far too long, and they were running special teams that were not successful. And they just, again, Lou was loyal to a fault. He had his guys. He wanted his guys in place, and he wanted a coach that was basically, you're my coach, but remember, I'm the GM, and that didn't really fly with Waugh. So I think Waugh, obviously, as we see, Waugh's still here. So they weren't a package deal. And I think Waugh is very happy Lou's no longer here. And listen, they got the little French connection going now. So I'm sure Darche and Waugh could build a very nice relationship.
I try to ask it nicely, and you're just like, no, they just straight up didn't like each other.
I mean, I don't want to listen. I didn't come on Punk Bunker to beat around the bush. We tell it how it is. They didn't like each other.
We say the truth here. We say the truth.
A black car might show up outside my door soon from Lou, but they didn't like each other.
Do you think if they're going a retool / kind of route here, that Patrick Waugh would be the right coach for that type of team moving forward?
So it's funny because as far as the fan base, Waugh, I said all last season, Dobson was the most polarizing personality because you'd have people that love, like he was an analytical darling, right? So you had people that loved him and then other people that were like, no, the eye test sucks. I can't stand this guy. The other most polarizing figure is probably Patrick Waugh, the coach, because you have people that can't stand him and don't think he puts together a good lineup, don't think he coaches a good game. And then you have other people that say, listen, he didn't even have his assistants. He motivates these guys. I was sort of one of the rare in-betweens where I'm like, I want to give him time. I want to see him with guys he wants to be there because, to be quite honest with you, his whole tenure so far it's been purely Lou's teams. Like the only guy that came that was more like a Waugh guy was Duclair, and he got injured basically right off the bat. So I think building a team that you give Waugh a chance to develop more of his guys. These other guys, they were older players. They were here under a different regime, developed under different coaches. I think now that you're getting an influx of youth, you're going to really see how good of a coach Waugh is because, you got Heineman, Schaefer, 17, 18-year-old player that's going to be in the lineup. What can he do with him? How are you going to handle the goalies? Is Varley going to play? Is it going to be Rittich? A number of things. And I think it's a big season for Waugh because even if it's not just about the wins and losses for me either, as far as Waugh, like I want to see how the development goes. Like, we know what Horvat, Barzal, Sorokin are as players. I want to see what you do with the next wave of guys, the Holmstroms coming up. As I said, Schaefer, Heineman. Maybe if you call up some other young guys or another young guy surprised to make the team, what can you do with them? What can you mold them into? Like, I want to see him develop some guys. Major key. And obviously, as you guys know, you've been through it with Ottawa. You need a coach that's going to develop these guys. Because if you're going to bring that young core together and you want them to go to the next level, you need the coach that's going to take them to the next level, as you guys sort of had this year.
Yeah. Just to follow up there, were they able to hire more Patrick Roy-oriented assistants?
Yeah, they hired all new. They got rid of the 2 assistant coaches and they hired 2 new power play guy, new PK guy. And I mean, the PK was like atrocious. It was, I don't know which one was worse by the end of the year, to be honest, but it was just awful. But again, another thing I want to see now, there's no excuse of, oh, this isn't my assistant. The special teams have to improve. That's another thing that's on WA. So a lot of questions, but I think he was a good coach in this short spurt with the Avalanche as well. I think he won. Did he win the Jack Adams the first year? He might have.
He might have, yeah.
I think he won, and then they had a disagreement with Sakic and left abruptly, which didn't work for a while. But
sounds familiar.
Yeah,
he might be known. He might be known for arguments and leaving that situation rather quickly after the fact. Might be kind of a thing of his.
A little bit.
So now that we've kind of talked about everything that's really happened this offseason, you guys, this has been one of our more interesting episodes. We've covered, I think this is probably our 7th or 8th team having a local guy on our show to talk about. And this has been one of the more interesting ones because you guys have had a crazy busy offseason. And I don't know if there's too many teams that have had more change from the trade deadline till now and big noteworthy things happen than the Islanders. So with all of that in mind, give us some your expectations and be your predictions for 25, 26. Where do you think the team's headed? And in your opinion, what would constitute a successful season? Obviously, they're not cup contenders, so you got to find success in other ways. So what would that look like to you?
So as far as standings, I think they're on the outside looking in, to be quite honest. I could see them being, I guess, like maybe around 10th in the East to basically further down top 5 pick-esque thing. But as far as me, in regards to the success of the team, again, it's about the youth. Someone I forgot to mention somehow just popped in my head. Cal Ritchie's another guy. He's a guy that can make the roster this year. I want to see him play well. I want to see Schaefer. I want to see what you do at the end of the college seasons for Yzerman, Finley, Nelson. So for me, success isn't about the wins and losses and making the playoffs this year. As I said, I see it as more of an evaluation year. I just want to see positive development when it comes to the youth. And basically just have that confidence going into next year. I don't need a playoff series to make me confident going into next year, but if these young guys that are going to be part of the team for the next decade look good, I'll feel confident about the future. It's not about this year. It's about the next 5 to 10. So I want to see positive contributions from the youth.
Would you also kind of want to see the team move some of their veterans out then? Am I to assume that would be something you're looking for them to do as well?
So, I mean, listen, if they're on the outside looking in, I think it's a must. You have Pajot. And honestly, Pajot, a good player, but Pajot has been a player that has been in trade rumors probably the last 4 years with us. He's always been that guy. If we're able to land that big ticket, he would be the one going out the other way to make the money work. Like when we were going after DeBrincat a few years back, he was the guy that was going to go the other way. When, this offseason, if we were going to make a big play for a free agent, we would have had to get rid of Pajot in a separate trade. At the deadline, where we're going to trade Pajot, oh, we didn't get enough and we didn't want to eat money and this and that. So I think Pajot, if they're not in it, I think Pajot's gone for sure. Lee becomes interesting because this is your captain, homegrown player. I think you have to shop him. He's getting up there, but I could also just see them maybe trying to offer him a 3-year deal on the cheap. Maybe sort of similar to what you guys have done with Giroux. Just be a veteran presence, be one of our leaders, and stay on an extended deal. We know you love it here. I could see that sort of deal. And then you have other guys, like you have Tony D. If he has a solid year, yeah, flip him. He's a rental. Palmieri, you signed to 2. Drouin, you signed to 2. If they have value, sure. Same goes with the D-core, because I've been saying for the longest time they got to break up this D-core a little bit. You have Mayfield signed till forever. Polak signed to forever. Pelech signed forever, one injury away from maybe not being able to play anymore. He's been a great player, but, suffered a couple real tough injuries. So a lot of question marks with the veteran D. So it's one of those things too. If you could sell high and someone's willing to take guys with term, you should be moving on from them as well, because you need to create flexibility and you want to have that long term as you're beginning to compete. I think one thing you guys have done well in Ottawa is you now have a nice young core, and you also have flexibility, right? Like if you want to go out and make that big trade and land that big player now, you can do it, because you're not locked. I couldn't name one player off the top of my head that you're locked into for too long. I can name about 7 for the Islanders. So if you could get out from some of those deals, you do it, because you want to create flexibility. That seems to be the name of the game in the NHL, especially for GMs. Create that flexibility, add pieces, add picks, add prospects, and then when the time comes, if that big fish is available, you could go get him.
I am maybe one of the biggest critics of Pierre Dorion's tenure in Ottawa, but the one thing that I will give him absolute hands down credit for is the contracts that he signed, save for maybe the Josh Norris one, which we were able to get out of with the Dylan Cousins trade. And that's not because I dislike Norris. He just hurt all the time. But that is the one thing that Dorion set up Staios very, very well with, is in terms of their core players, the Stutzel, Kachuk, Sanderson, Shabanov. I mean, they're all $8 million players, which gives Ottawa, like you said, a ton of flexibility. I've got one more question for you, then I'll turn it over to Boyce for final words. You guys, it sounds like now there's a little bit of optimism in Long Island, an excitement that hasn't necessarily been there the last couple of years. But you guys suffered for a long time with a couple all-time greats in terms of worst GMs ever. And Ottawa had a pretty good run with one as well. I would say all 3 of these guys are probably statistically, in terms of their missing the playoffs how many years in a row, might be 3 of the worst going. But who's the worst general manager of all time? Gar Snow, Mike Milbury, or Pierre Dorion?
Oof.
We'll put Doug McLean in there too with Columbus, but they were expansion, and I really like Doug McLean, so I'm not going to put him on the list.
I choose like folding the franchise instead. Like I don't know. It's not a good lineup to choose from. I'll say Snow, just because how brutal those years were, and also Snow was so bad with the timing of making deals. Like I remember back when he made that Vanek deal for a rental, and you trade Matt Molson, who was a solid player at the time, draft picks, whatnot, whatever else. And it's just like, why would you do that? Why? Like, you're not ready to win. If you're right there ready to win, make the deal. They weren't ready to win. And it was early in the season too. They had to flip Vanek at the deadline. I mean, Snow has made, I could go on and on about Snow, but I'll take Snow just because he's pissed me off the most recently.
That example is very much reminiscent of DeBrincat and Chychrun's time in Ottawa. Short, sweet, largely ineffective.
And they weren't ready to win.
And flipped for a loss when we got rid of them, for sure. So, Boyce, any last questions for Rocco South? We'll go with Rocco South.
What's he think their record's going to be?
Points-wise?
Yeah.
Maybe like 82 points.
So similar.
Bad enough to miss the playoffs, not bad enough to get
good enough to win the lottery, Rocco. Good enough to win the lottery.
Win the lottery again. We got screwed out of the All-Star game. The least they could have done was fix the lottery for us. Now they're saying, "Oh, before the Olympics, we're going to give you a send-off. You send the guys." I'm not happy with that either. I want to win the lottery again. So, maybe we can win it again. I don't know, but I just think we'll see. Evaluation year 80. I just say 82 because that's more of like a 500-ish record. Came off the top of my head, but I think when you look at the league too, they're not nearly as bad. Like I look at the Penguins roster, they stink. The Chicago, they didn't even do anything. They're going to be good soon, right? But no. San Jose, no good. Even Boston might be pretty bad. Like, there's 4 or 5 teams I look at throughout the NHL that are definitely worse than the Islanders. I don't see them being that bad unless something crazy happens, to be honest. So similar spot to where they finished this past season, but with a much more positive outlook because of who they have in the fold.
Actually, I got one more for you because we didn't mention him at all, but it's a guy that's kind of progressed slow and steady, but he's gotten better and better each year, and that's Simon Holmstrom. And he had a very effective, especially the second half of last year. He was quite good with an expanded role. Is this a guy that you see being able to take the next step and establish himself as a bona fide, consistent 25 goal guy in the league, or was last season maybe more of a flash in the pan for him?
I like Simon a lot. He's good defensively, very responsible, really nice shot, good playmaker. I quite honestly wanted them to sign him long term. I believe they only ended up giving him a 2-year deal. He's one of the few players I would have been okay with just giving the term. You buy out his prime years, but they only gave him the 2. But I'm a big Simon believer. I like his game, and I think he's going to continue to progress. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar, but I could see him being, a steady 50, maybe 60-point guy in a good year, and just like a fan favorite because he's homegrown. He plays hard. He's a quiet guy. He's very easy to like. So big Simon fan.
Cool. Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great hearing all about the Islanders. We always love getting because we have our perspectives that we pay attention to, but you never get the full story unless you're talking to local fans because they ultimately know their team best. So thank you so much for joining us. And can we count on you for family pizza tour next time we're in Long Island? I mean, I got to try these famous pies.
Anytime you guys come down, Islanders beat up on the Sens, and we could have some pizza. It'll be great.
I can't wait for this cross league tour. I'm really into this. Honestly,
Darren, I think we're only about 15 or 25,000 followers away from getting a sponsor to pay for this trip. So we just got to keep grinding it out until we get there. And speaking of, if you are a fan of Isles House, please follow us. And to our viewers, please follow the Isles House. They do great stuff over there. And of course, follow Rocco at Pizza Sports Guy on Twitter for some great and sometimes outrageous takes, which we always love to see. So thanks again for your time.
Thanks for having me, boys.